Matthew Stafford, 4 touchdowns on the return of Nakua and your boy Cooper Kupp. They had a touchdown. One had 100-something yards, I think, on 7 catches. Like, the Rams are a different club with those two, right? Obviously.
Yes, they are.
I noticed
the buyers, maybe.
I noticed some tweet you made. Cooper Kupp was a little bit more held back than Nakua. It seems like I saw the exact same thing you did. It seems like Cooper was more low red zone, so he didn't have to run as deep and far. He got that touchdown on the scramble. Stafford.
Yeah, I don't even think that was planned. I think that was just him finding a spot, and then Stafford just finding him.
And Nakua just kind of ran everything as normal, like he's been all right.
He was. I don't know if we have the first read data yet, but he looked like he was a first read on a lot of routes.
Yeah,
and he looked great. He looked fantastic.
He was a bad boy, man. He's a bad boy.
Your professional opinion, you would say Nakua had no restrictions. Cooper probably had a shot clock on it or a pitch count.
Puka. So before the game, we heard. First of all, let me step back. My initial timeline for him was week 10. Okay, so this is week 8. I was not expecting him. I cannot remember the last time a player coming off of a 6+ week injury gets activated from IR, has 2 limited practices on a short week, and plays. Not only does he play, he gets targeted 9 times, catches 7 for 106, and only played 56% of the snaps. That was not predictable. He literally was the point man in the first couple drives. Like Cooper wasn't even relevant. He was there, but he was like, so they were not straightforward with us with Puka at all. What they were saying and what they did were 2 different things. He looked great. I expected him to struggle. He did not. I'll take it. Youth is a beautiful thing.
A firestorm's probably not imminent anymore.
They might be buyers now. I mean,
they
went on a big run last year, so.
Yeah, I heard they're in trade talks with a linebacker, I believe, from the Bucks, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see what the Bucks do because they had a rough weekend. So, but yeah, no, that was and you guys will probably talk about this later. And I mentioned this last night, and I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and it still holds true. Whoever plays the Lions has a significant issue. That hangover effect is real, man. They must play hard. At this point, it can't be coincidental. Like, if you go back to last year, I think it still applies, which is kind of crazy. But
I think the stat I saw was teams are 0-5 this year.
But then if you go back last year, I think it's still pretty solid. So that's not fluky at that anymore in time. Yes, it was a short week and so on and forth. But I mean, if you look at the teams that were expected to win and the ones that actually ended up winning those games, it's like, okay, there's definitely struggling. So,
funny thing too, not to cut you off, I want to say either last year or 2 years ago that it was a similar stat with the 49ers as well. Whoever played the 49ers this week, the very next week they lost. I'm pretty sure it was last year, but I could be off the season.
I mean, the teams get super hyped up with to face a team, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, whether or not how that is, now they got to kind of pick up the cards, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Darnold didn't look that bad.
He was solid.
But the problem was he was only focusing on Jefferson, which is okay, but I mean, no one else had more than 2 catches, and they didn't activate Hawkinson. That's okay. It was a short week, and maybe they just weren't confident. He had a bad tear, and he didn't get his reconstruction until late January. Okay, you got to remember that even though he had it around Christmas, because of that bad MCL, if I remember correctly, he didn't have it until late January. So these usually take 10, 11 months. So we're not quite there yet. We're a little bit over 9 months out. So, and sometimes tight ends take a little bit longer. We saw Zach Ertz take a little bit longer. Gronk is a little bit of a freak, so it's hard to say anything for him. But, so I think he'll be activated next week. He pretty much has to be activated for next week. But unfortunately, they probably could have used him last night, and obviously he wasn't there.
What? Any update on Derek Carr?
So they already ruled him out for this week.
He's out.
They said Spencer Rattler was starting, so I'm assuming that means Carr is out. He still couldn't practice yet with his oblique. That makes me think it's closer to a grade 2.
And I believe they've lost whatever. They just hit the rock bottom. They said
lost
they beat the
Shaun,
Cowboys.
obviously.
Yeah, they beat the Cowboys' ass, and everybody thought they were. I'm like, man, the Cowboys are a bad football team, and then they've proven me right on that one. Derek Carr is just, even with them, I don't think they're a very good team. I'm curious. The reason I ask is, do they do something in New Orleans as well during this trade deadline that's coming up? Because
they just extended Kamara, so shout out to him, but Kamara fractured his hand in week 5 against the Chiefs. Didn't miss anything. He's been playing with it. Fractured his ribs in, I don't know, whatever week it was, 2 or 3 they announced. Hasn't missed a game. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, I like it.
That's, I mean, even if he struggled a little bit, okay.
Joel Embiid missed the whole goddamn first 3 weeks. Doc, where you at with Tua returning? Practice last 2 days?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a full go. I don't have any restrictions on him. I put out a chart yesterday, I think it was, about, I analyzed, or one of my guys analyzed, and I continue to analyze it, all of the quarterbacks over the past 4 years, somewhere around there, their history of concussions, their data up to that concussion, and their first game back. What did it show? And I analyzed, you can tell my page somewhere, and you can see there's 16, but Tua never came back, so I removed him from one of them. And you can see that 5 out of the 15 really struggled in their first game back, which is, it's not a huge sample size, but 15 is not small. It's not like 2 people. The only player that did better after their concussion was Lamar Jackson, and that was a playoff game. I don't know, how much we can bear weight with that, but Anthony Richardson was a neutral. Pretty much everyone was worse. Most of the people were worse. So, that's not to predict what Tua is going to do. I just thought it was fascinating because we just assume, hey, they're fine. We don't have any restrictions and they don't have any dip. Well, they do have a dip, at least from a QB perspective. And there's 5, 6 currently active NFL quarterbacks that showed that they really struggled. You just had to extrapolate the fact that which day they had their concussion, and then obviously when they came back and kind of go from there. The average time missed was 1 game. No one missed more than 2 games. Tua was shut down, but there was only 2 games left, so hence the 2 games. But Tua was like a third of the 2+ games, so he made up most of that data. I think Carr was one of the other ones. But Tyreek popped up on the foot yesterday. We'll see what's going on with that. Waddle's been banged up a little bit of a quad. I think he's okay. But I think just in general, they're just going to look a lot better. They may not be full sequence and everything's perfect, but, you're going to see a dramatic difference between him and, between previously to
Huntley or whoever else they had, playing. Yep. No.
Hey, Doc, where you at with CMC's return for the Niners, who desperately need him back? Brock Purdy's proven that he's a bus rider, not a bus driver. And then where you at with Nick Chubb? Nick Chubb was seen doing some insane power clean and hand clean work after the knee. You notice this? I think it's.
Oh, I didn't see this one.
Yeah,
that's a throwback clip.
He's a freak, though. I mean, he's a freak. So
is he ready to go, though? Is that kid ready to go or no?
He played last week a little bit.
He played last week. He got a TD. I expect him to ramp up for about 2-3 more weeks. He's never been much of a receiver, so he's not going to get much third down work. But I didn't get to watch that game, unfortunately. Just what was available to me, it wasn't available. I didn't expect him to come in and smash. But they're a super pass funnel team, so now we'll see what they're going to do. I think he's going to look better with each week, but he's 29 now, coming off of a significant knee injury for the second time in his career. I'm not going to expect him to look like he's 24, like he's on top of the world again, but the kid's a freak. We know that. So would I put it past him to look pretty good compared to some of the other stuff we're seeing? No. As far as McCaffrey, they just gave us an update about 3 minutes ago. It popped up a second ago. He's green light, looking like a green light for week 10. Week 10. Again, with Puka, we didn't really know, and we can't really know with McCaffrey, but my suspicion is that it's going to be a kind of a split backfield between him and Mason. Maybe they use him a little bit more as a receiver to kind of avoid some of the pounding. especially if they have, playoff aspirations. They're probably going to need him later. He's missed the first 9 games. They have a bye week or 8 games, whatever it is. They have a bye week next week, I think it is. And he'll come back after that. Do I expect him to get 25 touches in the first game? No, but would it surprise me at the same time? No.
I have a question about another running back, Travis Etienne. Is he really hurt, or is he they're kind of keeping him out for trade bait? We got a Jaguars fan in the chat.
Good question. I was a little surprised he practiced last week, the first week after sustaining a hamstring strain.
Yeah,
they were in London, so I think maybe they just had him do something, but obviously he didn't play. Bigsby looks good. Like, the kid is good. We thought he was going to be potentially good, and then maybe he was a bust, but no, he's pretty good. I don't know which way this is going to go. I don't think he's going to play this week. If he does, he's pretty high risk for re-injury, so we have to be careful there, like Mike Evans last week. Is it possible that they trade him? Yeah, I think it is, and I think teams may potentially pay a top dollar. He came into the season as looking like a top 5 to 8 running back, bell cow potential. It hasn't worked out this year, but realistically, I think that we don't really know. But I think he needs another week or 2 before he's good and not still increased risk for hamstring re-injury.
Lots of running backs are hurt, JB. I'm sorry. One more question on my end. Jonathan Taylor, any updates on him?
It's looking like green light. We have back-to-back practices. Do I have reservations about him suffering a new injury? Yes, I do. But but at the same time, I think he's back. And if they can get a IR to look better, and actually start putting stuff together, maybe this team can start looking good. As from a fantasy perspective, you cannot trust any of the receivers right now with Richardson throwing. It's just, you can't. It's too much risk. If Taylor's out there, you're going to start him. If Richardson's out there, you kind of have to decide to have him as my QB7 this week, but it's hard to trust him. It's just, for right now, it's hard to trust him.
For fantasy purposes, I'm with you. For real life purposes,
I get it.
Just win, baby, win. We got a big time divisional game against the Texans. We're 4-3. They're 5-2. We win. Yep. We flip that thing around. Big time.
Texans are not looking good without Collins. Like, that pass game looks suspect. Right.
Hey, Doc, you mentioned Mike Evans. I saw something that he's like a week 8 after the bye, so that would put it at I don't know. That put him out 4 weeks from now?
I think it's going to be at least 3, probably closer to 4. I think.
So is that just a bad strain? Tear,
yeah. He already had a grade 1. This is his 9th injury to his hamstring. I have data going back to 2014, somewhere around there. 2012. I don't know. I have to look, but I calculated the other day. Now, mind you, they could be in different spots. There are different things, but if there was a report of him dealing with a hamstring injury, it was on my record going back to college, if I could find it. So that tells you that, he's a veteran. Like remember Julio Jones used to have hamstrings a lot. But he plays through them. Unfortunately, he played through this one and it backfired. So he turned a grade 1 into a grade 2, which is a partial tear, which is a big deal. Very high risk for re-injury. And realistically, he probably needs closer to 6 weeks. He won't do that, but he needs closer to 6 weeks to feel comfortable. But remember, he's going to be the alpha now with Godwin out. So, he's got to be a little bit smart here, because if not, they're going to struggle, I think, in the next week or 2, because they got McMillan, they got Palmer, they got Otten. Maybe they use White a little bit more, but they don't have any alpha. They went from 2 alphas to 0 alphas in a matter of 20 minutes.
What about Jayden Daniels?
So I think they're going to try to practice him today. I don't think he plays this week, which is so unfortunate. I wanted to see this matchup. He's my front runner for MVP right now. I know it sounds crazy, but you go from a dysfunctional franchise that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn to what are they, 5-2, somewhere around there? Competitive in every game. The kid's putting up monster stats. Looks like a seasoned veteran. Rib injury was fluky. It wasn't. He just landed on it kind of funny. And I think it's a rib. It's probably a rib cartilage fracture, which is what I call it. These are painful. These do not feel good. I don't think it's a fracture per se, because they basically said it wasn't. He could play this week. I just think it's a little risky. And you're kind of playing with fire because then he could miss a couple weeks if he re-injures it. So I think they err on a side of caution, let Mariota play, unfortunately, and then they come back the following week, and he should be good to go that in week 9.
Man, that
No
sucks,
doubt.
man. Everybody want to see that matchup, man.
Yeah, go ahead, Smitty. Any other updates you got before you get out of here? I know there's a lot of guys. You got 80 guys on your list, but
this is by far. People ask me this a bunch of times. This is by far the worst I've ever seen, without question. I don't ever remember going into the 80s. I've been doing this since 2017. Maybe full time 2018. So that's a lot of years to reference. Andy Dalton out with a thumb sprain, second to a car accident. Deontay Johnson might not play, or if he does play, he's going to be on Sertan, so probably not worth your time. As far as Will Levis, not quite ready yet. Montgomery got lucky. Bucky Irving's out with a turf toe, so Sean Tucker and Rachaad White probably going to split. White might do a lot more receiving. Tajay Spears and Jerome Ford, I don't think are ready this week. They could play. I just don't really trust them. I think Jonathan Brooks makes his debut next week. Stevenson should be better than last week. Chubb should get a little bit more work than last week. Ayuk, unfortunately, done for the year with that what we call a terrible triad: ACL, MCL, meniscus. Juwan Jennings still hasn't practiced yet, so maybe it's going to be a Pearsall, Cowing, and I think Debo plays, which is impressive, going from the hospital with pneumonia back in the field in less than a week. But it sounds like he was on the field yesterday. Kittle was on the field too, so we'll see how they end up playing out. Metcalf is going to probably try to go today, but I don't think he'll want to try, but I don't think he should play. That MCL is risky. One tackle on the outside of his knee, and he's going to re-injure it, and he also threatens his ACL too, so it's not worth the risk. Tyreek, I don't know about his foot. It just popped up. I'm assuming he's going to play. He usually does. Zay Flowers did suffer that what looked like a high ankle. He played pretty much the rest of the game, didn't really get any volume except for that one backwards pass that was a fumble or whatever it was. He hasn't practiced yet this week. So even if he does play, it's going to be hard to trust him. Rashad Bateman looked really good last week. Andrews hasn't had more than 4 targets yet in a while, but he's obviously caught some balls. But so we'll have to see how that plays out. Braxton Berrios unfortunately tore his ACL for the downfield of the Dolphins. Juju's out with a hammy. Demario Douglas should be healthy with his illness. And then we had, hell of a game last night from Puka Nacua, surprisingly. Chris Olave should be back. Jaden Reed will be fine. We don't know about Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey. Both are banged up, as is Will Dissly, so they're kind of running out of guys to throw to there. We should see Malik Neighbors have a better week this week because of his groin strain. Jacoby Myers went from practicing to not practicing, so that one's a little tricky. Hard to trust anyone on that team except for Bowers. And then I think Kittle plays. Jontavian Sanders, the young kid from tight end from the Carolina Panthers, has a groin and a wrist. Tough matchup. Hard to really trust them. Taysom Hill likely makes his return this week from multiple rib fractures. Dallas Goedert probably out with a hammy. And we will probably see Hawkinson next week. Everyone else, Ingram, is healthier with each week. Those are the main guys that I'm focused on.
Hey, Doc, real quick before you get out of here, I want to correlate this with you real quick. James Wiseman, NBA kid, a young kid, 21-year-old kid, tore his Achilles officially. His Achilles is done. There's already like 46 kids that have been hurt and are out tonight in the NBA. Let me ask you, now that we've brought up turf, we've brought up all these things on the NFL side of the Achilles tears. It's happening in basketball too now. Oh, yeah. I've never seen it. I've never seen Achilles torn like this at a young age, especially at a young age. Is there any, what are you tying the dots here, connecting them at all? Or is there any conspiracies out here? Like, what is it?
I thought Wiseman was a little older, but
yeah. He's like mid-20s, probably 24, probably 23.
23, yeah, you're right. You're right, 23. I thought he was a little older. Maybe he's just one of those. I was thinking
right out of college, ain't he? He didn't play. He went right to the league, didn't he?
That's why. Because I'm like, I remember him being in Golden State. But he, either way. So traditionally, we used to see these in older 20s, early 30s. Remember Durant. Remember Kobe. These are usually later in their careers, not early 20s. You saw Dobbins obviously have it in NFL. We saw Akers have it twice. But then we saw comparison. You saw Rodgers have it at 39 basically.
Yeah.
And then you saw Cousins having it 35, somewhere around there. So traditionally we don't see it early in the 20s. You can obviously get it. This is going to sound funny, and we talked about this whatever day it was last week or earlier this week. I think a combination of some of their training, some of their foods, some of the inflammatory foods, I think back-to-backs, but we didn't see this type of stuff. At least, I wasn't really old enough to appreciate it, but in the 80s and early 90s, I don't remember it being this prevalent. So I don't know why. I wish I knew why. I don't know why it's happening.
Yeah. It feels like, we talked about this even last season. It does feel like Achilles injury specifically has just increased so much in the last, 5 years or so. I never used to hear about it. When I played it, it was ACL was at an all-time high. It was MCLs. Those were the common injuries for the knee. But I never used to hear about somebody tearing their. I don't remember having a teammate. Now that I look back in high school or college who tore their Achilles. I really don't. I don't think I ever had one.
Yeah, as I said, it wasn't very common. And people were messaging me, but sometimes I do NBA content. And you saw it looked like a calf. It didn't look like when you see an Achilles, you see that snap. Yeah. You see them grab their leg, oh my God. He was you could see him kind of hopping over, but I'm like, yes, they called it a calf. And I'm like, left calf strain likely, but I can't rule out the Achilles just given the nature of the position and with these guys. And he doesn't even have that many shots on him, right? He's not that young. He's not that old enough to have that many.
Right.
I injected one 3 days ago. Mm-hmm. These hurt. These are not comfortable injections. This tissue is it's a lot of stress. There's a ton of tension going through this tissue. And some guys have interstitial tears. There's a watershed area about an inch or two above the where it attaches to the heel. Just doesn't heal well. These guys, and I tell the people this, we talked about this a couple months ago. You need to scan this stupid tendon with an ultrasound. And if you have to, especially you high-level athletes, you have to be proactive with this. This is a devastating injury. 20-minute ultrasound, spend a couple G's on PRP or stem cells, and prevent this damn thing from ever tearing. It will save you millions of dollars and a year of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's low testosterone. These motherfuckers are low T. But anyway,
I think that plays a role too. I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's a lot of things to it.
I'm telling you, that's a real thing. No one wants to talk about that one. Let me ask you, D-Hop, is he going to be good to go for the Chiefs before you get out of here?
Yeah, that knee, it'll linger a little bit, but I'm not really worried about it. I think overall, great spot, great price. I'm happy for him. I'm hoping he can get a ring. He's had a hell of a career. Dude's a baller. He's kind of like Mike Evans. He will play through anything if he can. And now, I can't remember the last time that, if ever, that Mahomes had a true X that was just a ball, like a dog. I know he's a little older, but it was a quarterback play in Tennessee. So, he's probably not going to be amazing this week, but he has another reliable target that actually is a big dude. Like Rashee Rice is awesome, but he's not the same stature, right? Hollywood Brown he's my size. He's not a big dude. So, you're putting Hopkins in there, who's monster, who's been a beast for 10 years now.
Great hands, yeah.
So we'll see. I think it's going to be nice. He's going to have another outlet, and hopefully they can turn it around, because Mahomes, I think, has more interceptions than touchdowns.
He does,
despite being undefeated, right?
Leads the league in picks. It's crazy. Hey, Diop woke up 1-5, going to bed tonight 6-0. Crazy, huh?
and he still makes the same money.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, Doc, man, always a pleasure. I appreciate you coming out. We'll see you Tuesday with all the updates, and have a good weekend.